a little bit of a NETT perspective. And Sharon can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the nice thing is, since the other two networks went first, is there's not all that much more to say. I can give you a little bit about the NETT, but I think that last statement of considering the group as we're from the NETT coordinating center as opposed to the data center, data statistical management center, or the clinical coordinating center, I think that's really a philosophy that we've embraced too within the NETT. A lot of why there are biostatisticians and clinicians in each of these small groups is from our cumulative experience over the years, is that biostatisticians and scientific partners are really important to have so that you get your ideas right and that you don't come into problems with the design later. So the NETT is the granddaddy of the major NINDS clinical trials networks. It was funded in 2006, right after I got to the University of Michigan. And the idea is that neurological emergencies, in contrast to some other diseases, present unique problems, and the NETT provided a solution. So I'll go over a little bit of the process by which the NETT approach takes to these things and what we're doing and how you might get involved. And the overall idea of this course is that you're designing clinical trials that would motivate these networks to think that what you have is potentially a good idea for a multi-center trial someday to prove some patient-level intervention that's going to improve outcomes. So in neurological emergencies, there's a huge spectrum of pathology. And one of the fundamental themes of NETT is that there's a time dependence to many of these things. That if you wait too long, the brain has an expiration, or the brain or spinal cord, it has an expiration date, and you may pass that. And that, a lot of what Bill Barson talked about in the NINDS-TPA trial, if they hadn't forced half the patients to be treated within 90 minutes, they wouldn't have catalyzed the entire systems of care in America to say, stroke is something we can do something about, and we need to do something fast. If you don't treat things fast in neurological emergencies, in most cases, you may lose the opportunity to actually alter the trajectory of outcomes. So these are some of the potential conditions that NETT looks at. The solution, and this, Scott brought the NINDS perspective into this, is the emergency department is not an easy place to do research. I know many of you are neurologists. I know many of the neurologists in my department, since I'm duly appointed in both departments, they don't really like going to the emergency department too much. There's usually not good things going on down there. Like, oh, this person's arm has been tingling since the Carter administration. Can you, this is an emergency? I was like, well, it's 3 months for a neurology appointment, so you can see it. That's not what I say, but that's sometimes how they do. So, also, the pathology, the spectrum of pathology, it's a crazy environment. And as some of the small groups, in our small group, the idea of recruiting a patient into a clinical trial who's suddenly cognitively impaired, the family is bewildered and say, yeah, we're doing this research trial. We may have something that can help you. There's a need for expertise in this area. And part of the idea of the NETT was to build that infrastructure so that at each site, you could build a cadre of coordinators and investigators who were good at doing this. And by having multiple trials going on at the same time, you capitalize on those economies of scale. And we kind of covered all that. I said, I was telling everybody I was going to go through 32 slides in 7 minutes. I'm probably not on track yet. So the idea is that it takes, to use a cliche, it takes a village. That if you're going to do this sort of research, you can focus on the emergency department, but if you're not engaging neurointensivists, neurosurgeons afterwards, you really need to get consensus across the institution. Because if you're taking care of a traumatic brain injury patient and they're going to be trauma ICU, you have to have those people engaged first. And the idea is you have those multidisciplinary collaborations within the network so you can get those things done. So this sort of gives a little bit of a history of some of the things that have gone on in the NETT. I think I want to focus a little bit more, not so much on what the NETT has done, but what the process would be, because I think that's one of the questions one would have. I know some of you aren't sort of doing the emergency care type research and maybe less relevant to you, but I think that's something that came up in the other talks is, these are open networks. You as an investigator are able to propose trials to these networks, even if you're not at one of the sites of these networks, and how exactly does that work? So the the first 2 trials that NETT was sort of charged to do, or the first 3. Alias was a albumin and acute ischemic stroke trial that was ongoing that NETT helped to sort of bring to completion with the addition of the additional sites. Rampart was a status epilepticus study, which was the first study that was sort of fully completed by NETT, looking at status epilepticus in the ambulance using an auto-injector. Protect progesterone in acute ischemic stroke. Point is a TIA minor stroke study of dual antiplatelet therapy. And then Shine is the trial of the Karen Johnson's the administrator PI of looking at intense glucose control in acute ischemic stroke. Recently, the ATAC trial of blood pressure control in intracerebral hemorrhage has been something that we've been working to help out with enrollment in North America on. So this is the mission. You can all read faster than I can talk, but the idea is really this is the sort of, it echoes the mission of the NIH. We're doing this to improve outcomes of patients so that we can learn, and this is a difficult area to learn in, and we know that we need to do it quickly. And this vision goes along with these things. This is a slide set that Dr. Barson gives out and recommends for people who are giving 1-hour brain rounds. So it should be totally fine for me to do this in 2 more minutes. Yeah. So, but like many of the other networks, we have this hub and spoke approach. 17 current hubs, and you can give a guess as to how many people are NETT sites when we talk about all the spokes. And again, it's a probability cloud, not necessarily a real number. Although somebody in some database has some idea as to what all of those engaged sites are. One of the things about this, is in slight distinction to some of the other networks, is that we have required that every one of the hubs participates in every one of the trials. Now, you may be at a hospital like, so University of Michigan is not a hub, is a clinical coordinating center, but we're not a hub in that. We do participate in some of the trials as a spoke of other sites. But if the University of Michigan was to participate in a trial in NETT, and it was status epilepticus, we may want to have a spoke actually open that up, because in our community there just isn't a lot of status epilepticus. And each spoke, each hub may elect, if there's a spoke that they work with that has a lot of head trauma, that might be the site that they're primarily running their trial at. So there's flexibility, but that every hub complex should be doing every trial. And there may be, these things are not all hard and fast rules, but that's traditionally been the way things are going. We want to do large, simple trials, but that's not to say we want to do trials that are necessarily easy to do. A lot of the discussion Karen had yesterday about kind of streamlining your protocol, collecting only essential data, this applies very strongly here. We want to have higher enrollment to lower the per patient cost, because you have the infrastructure, you have the boots on the ground, and if you can get more patients in, then you're going to get we focus on phase 3 intervention trials, and we want patients with sort of diverse enrollment, patients in practice environments, again usually in the emergency department or the pre-hospital setting, and trials that are going to give readily applicable results. Some of our trials, especially those that are done in the ambulance and people who are acutely incapacitated, involve exception from informed consent, which is a whole topic in and of itself. We could spend a couple days on. I'm not going to talk about it too much. We do not currently have a central IRB. Someday we will, but in our current iteration, we don't. A lot of what we're trying to do is sort of design for the future and think about how are the results from our trials going to be translated into practice. And that's something, I think, to sort of take a step as to when we get ideas or people want to do something in our network, we do have this sort of matrix, and we sort of think about, well, what's the potential public health intervention of this? Is the NIH going to be interested in an investment in chronic low back pain, knowing that it does affect a large proportion of the population, but our ability to get good, biologically proven interventions in that disease may be relatively limited right now. So if somebody comes to us with those ideas, we'll work with them, but it may be sort of pointing to the basic science and early clinical data to say, gosh, we don't have really good targets here. This isn't necessarily ready for a phase 3 interventional trial in the emergency space. Talk a little bit about the accomplishments. We finished our first trial ahead of schedule. That was the pre-hospital status epilepticus trial. The organizational structure, again, we have 17 hubs and the probability cloud of number of spokes. We have the clinical coordinating center that sort of sends the money out to the hubs through the master agreements that was talked about before, and then each hub goes out to the spokes. The Statistical Data Management Center is a key partner with us in terms of developing the trial, operating the trial, designing the trial. And if you have your own biostatistician from your own institution, that's okay. You can develop your entire trial protocol with them, but the implementation of the data collection and overall conduct of the trial will be operated out of the SDMC. So if you have a statistician at your shop who would be doing the design elements, simulations, those sorts of things in advance, that's totally fine. And we're very happy to work with teams that are developing trials in that area. This is the map. You've seen several maps. It looks a lot like the other maps. I think this might be Bill didn't update this map, so this doesn't have the new sites. So there's the University of Pittsburgh, Ohio State University, and UCLA, and Pittsburgh. Massachusetts General Hospital. And this one? SUNY Downstate. Yes, I did this one. So the map is updated. We are potentially open to industry-sponsored studies. Unlike NeuroNext, we haven't had any yet. But again, there's a standard operating procedure for that. But again, focus on investigator-initiated studies. Again, the process for investigator-initiated studies is you would submit an idea similar to the protocol synopsis form that you guys use as part of this course, and that would start the conversation. You would get some feedback from potentially the program staff at NINDS, you get some feedback from us at the CCC and the SDMC, and we would work with you on that. We'd discuss it on the Executive Council for NETT, and then we would potentially have additional meetings to try to help develop your idea. An example of this is we're trying to develop a study in vertigo. We're having a meeting in Ann Arbor on Friday where we're going to try to better flesh out that idea to hopefully move that forward. And we've had a couple other meetings on it too. So the idea is we're definitely open to submissions. And the idea as you design your sort of single center trials here is that you want to do something that would inform our decision making and say this is a good public health problem. There's good preclinical and early phase clinical trial data to inform this, and this would be something that would be of use for the network. We have enrollment dashboards. This is kind of nice in terms of, and this may be something to consider when you do your own trial, is looking at this frequently, saying, well, here's where my recruitment should be, here's where my recruitment is, and that can be motivating. In multi-center trials, it's essential to look at these sorts of things, because then you can start to say, gosh, what do we need to do differently about recruitment? With that, we talked about the trials that we're working on. This is a nice slide. It's great when your trial ends early, and when it ends early because it accrued faster than expected. It's not so great when it ends early, when it doesn't accrue enough. And that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, so that was a tremendous accomplishment for Dr. Silverlight and Dr. Kukowski, and the network as a whole, and all the patients who were volunteers in this trial. Community outreach is something that we're actually working on more now. We recently had the conference in Ann Arbor on bringing in patients, advocates and patients to help us in the trial planning process. For trials that involve exception from informed consent, as Adrian pointed out yesterday, you do have to do a lot of community consultation, community outreach. Let the community know that they're being experimented on and why they're being experimented on without the ability to give prospective consent. In the emergency situation, the only way for us to learn about whether there's any treatments that will make them better if they have acute traumatic brain injury or acute status epilepticus is for us to engage communities, tell them, we can only know if this method for treating your seizures is going to help you if we do this research in this way. And it's important to make sure that you're very transparent and open to communities. So you don't end up on the front page of the Seattle Times saying, did you know they're doing this head bleed study? So anyway. Any questions about how the NETT approaches clinical trial development? Dr. Singh.
You mentioned NeuroNext something they're doing some phase 2-ish trials. You mentioned how the NETT is focused on phase 3 trials. For those who want to do emergency research and get a phase 2 trial going, and they bring it to the NETT, does the NETT help to direct them towards resources to get that done given the complicated logistics of emergency research, neurologic emergencies?
So I think the answer is it depends on how far into phase 2 it is. I think there are some phase 2 trials. We've submitted an application for a spinal cord neuroprotection trial that's really in the phase 2 space. So it's not to say that we can't do phase 2 trials, but they should be ready for the multi-center phase 2 trial phase. I think that, so I know that it's not a satisfying answer for me to say. It depends. I don't know if Scott or Robin have any other sort of perspective on it.
Just to add, I mean, this is the biggest dilemma that we have. So we do have other mechanisms, and we support exploratory studies and phase 3 trials independent of the networks. We can do that. There is a base in terms of when we put something into a network that it really has to be, enough in scope to justify sort of the off balance of the money that we spend. Otherwise, the study and the network will cost us more than if we did it outside. So, I mean, there are efficiencies, but you can go quickly in the other direction. And, NET was originally designed because, again, the focus and the target and the questions that were out there were really sort of streamlined towards answering some of these phase 3. And so we kind of niched it in that market. That's evolved over time, but, as we sort of wrestle with, how to have infrastructure, not all phase 2 studies are going to require such a large infrastructure. So that's one of the things we have to wrestle with. The other 2 networks have a system in play that decides how many sites are needed for it. The thing we're wrestling with the stroke network, we think that a study that comes in probably has to be doable in at least 5 or 6 of our our compounds warrant putting it into the machinery. And ideally, it should be doable in all of them, or close to all of them, because if we have to expand, we need somewhere to expand too. So that's a little bit, but that's what we consult with on the NINDS side, and we would determine if it's a study that really is 1 or 2 sites, it really is faster and more efficient to do it at 1 or 2 sites. Putting in a machinery is going to slow it down. But a bigger study benefit because everything's already system.
So on a similar vein, other than trying to move a phase 2 study into a network, is there an opportunity for guidance from the structure of the net? I guess I have a lot of research, a lot of experience. So if we do have something that's sort of in the emergency trial space, but it's really sort of early development. I know there's like a journal club and some online forums. Is there a way to sort of bring in and get feedback or in that arena from the net investigators?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're open. I mean, I think as Chris pointed out in our Max, that when they get the formal protocols that require a lot of development and all the sort of headache and heartache that goes into that their network infrastructure can get a bit overwhelmed in preparing all those protocols. But for like the high level, like scientific advice as to, gosh, I'm designing this early phase trial, would this, if I did, it's sort of like the experiment, like if you do this trial at the end of it with these answers, will you know what to do next? And that sort of advice, I think, informally talking to Bill Barson, Yuko Palish, and they may direct them sort of down the pipe to me and Sharon. But I think we're willing to provide that sort of advice in those things. Because I think we want you to do, if you're doing an early phase trial, we would want it to, if it's potentially in the neurological emergency space, be good. Because one of the things that we've noticed over the past several years, we won't go into it too much, is that one of the issues with trying to design the phase 3 trials is that we haven't got enough information from the phase 2 trials to adequately have good candidates in the space, and it is a difficult place to do research. So I think having early discussions of, this is something I want to move through, because then we give you some of that feedback of, gosh, these are the things we would really want to know from your your early phase 2 single center study that would really help us design either a later phase 2 study for our network or even a phase 2. I would hesitate to go with a phase 2/3, but we won't go there. But the answer, in short, is yes. And there's not necessarily a formal process, but one thing that we do have, and that you would certainly be happy and invited to, is when we have our sort of yearly or every other yearly investigator meetings, people who have had ideas that they're working on developing, even if they're not from one of the NET sites, have been welcome to come and pitch ideas. They're even on video, actually, on the website somewhere, where everybody pitched briefly their ideas. And I think we have those behind a password thing, right? So, but Joy could probably let you see, like, sort of I pitched an extremely crazy idea. It's probably no surprise. But we have at our net retreat, we do have the opportunity for that. So that's another potential outlet for feedback and ideas. Typically that's looking for things to do in the network. But since we had like 40 people pitch ideas, it's clear that we weren't looking for 40 R01 or U01s to be submitted to NETT. So I think early guidance in that area we're happy to get.
So can I just add one thing about the stat component? So for folks in your stage of your career, this can be really nice if you don't have access to your own statisticians at your own institution. We are happy to work with y'all on these grant proposals, but keep in mind, it could be seen the other way, right? And so that's what we don't want. So if you have a statistician at your institution that you've been working with for a year or whatever in developing this trial, we have a track record of working with those statisticians as well. So it's not like you come to, at least, I think this is the case for all of the networks, certainly for NETT and StrokeNet. It's not the case that when you come to the network, this person that you have this relationship with and you've been working with forever is just done out in the cold. We have a track record of working with external folks if you have access to them. But again, if you don't, it is a nice resource.
And if when we start talking about sometimes you pair with junior people, if they're willing to take the time to go through this with you too from your own institution, that's great too, since they may not have a lot of experience either developing neuroscience trials. So we would encourage that too. But what we don't want is like when I don't turn the TV on for my kids, they go upstairs and ask mom to turn the TV. So you don't want to play that game with your sort of local statistician against the MUSC statisticians to say, oh, the MUSC statistician told me I need to do a CRM. Like, oh, the MUSC statisticians are crazy. You need to do a CRM. So I think bringing everybody to the table at the beginning so that there's not the potential for splitting, I think is a good strategy.
Chris mentioned yesterday how hard it is to sort of replace people on a DSMB. The same is true in the trial design process, right? So if you wait until a year and a half into thinking about the trial to have your staff folks at the table, we're going to have the whole conversation again because we're going to want to know, well, why did you make that decision? Did you think about this? So it's just a lot more efficient to have everybody at the table from the beginning.
But I think that's a good point. I think a lot of us are paired with junior statisticians at our institution who maybe don't have the experience of doing trials, but they're willing to learn and able to learn. So other than just going and PubMeding sort of where you give them papers for them to review, having a mentor, the same way that we have mentors at a national level, I think would be really beneficial. So, we're not really just ourselves, but we're like a team of our coordinator and our statistician,
Exactly. All right, any other questions?